Welcome to Fairy Tale Flip. I'm Vanessa Y. Rogers and my host is Donna Lee Fields, and once a month we come together and we dive into a fairy tale, and this month we are diving into one of the oldest stories, The Fisherman and the Djinn from 1001 Arabian Nights.
So this is part 2 of The Fisherman and the Djinn. Vanessa and I are deep into the conversation. Vanessa is now going to share some information about other versions of the Fisherman or the Djinn that she's so good at explaining, and then we're going to get into themes. So stay tuned. My goodness, you're going to love this.
Did you look into any of the parallel versions that we have that are told in different regions of the world that have a similar storyline? Okay, so there's one, you might be familiar with this one. It's a Grimm story. Have you heard of The Spirit in the Bottle? Okay, so it's a very simplified version. There's a woodcutter. He sends his son off to be educated. The son comes back after years and years, and the woodcutter has been worked to the bone. And one day he goes out to work with his father once he gets back from his education, and they sit down and rest. And the son starts to hear his voice from under a tree, and so he starts to dig, and under the tree is a glass jar, and he opens it up, and a spirit comes out, and he has to once again trick him back into the bottle because the spirit is going to kill him. And so once again he tricks him in, and then he says, I will give you a gift if you release me again. And so he gives him a gift of a cloth. On one end, it will heal anything, and on the other end, if you rub it on steel, it will turn it to silver. So it will make it will make you wealthy, and it will turn you into a healer. And so,
the Grimms. The Grimms always find something similar. They're just masters.
Yes,
okay.
And they believe that specifically that story came from the Arabian Nights version, The Fisherman and the Djinn. So that one, it seems to be a direct descendant of the Arabian Nights version. And then Pandora's Box. Are you familiar with that story?
I love that story. Man, we should look at that one sometime.
Yeah, but did you know? Okay, this kind of drives me nuts. It's not actually Pandora's box. It's not a box. It's a jar. There was a mistranslation in the 16th century, and for some reason we can't correct ourselves. We can't say, oh, it wasn't Pandora's box after all, it was Pandora's jar. Why are we still saying box from one mistranslation?
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, a jar, you usually think of a genie in a jar, and you think of all the wonderful things that happens coming out of the jar. That's what fairy tales have led us to believe. And a box is so enclosed. A box, well, I grew up with Pandora's box, that term, and so I always think of a box as something that could hold a lot of evil, those straight edges. A bottle doesn't have that sort of reference of being so scary.
Just to give our listeners who don't remember the story of Pandora's box, basically Zeus is very mad at Prometheus, who has stolen fire from the gods to give to humanity. And at this point in time, humanity has the good life. They don't have labor, they don't die, they don't have sickness. And Zeus decides to punish humanity instead of directly punishing Prometheus. And so Prometheus is gifted from Zeus Pandora, who is like this perfect, beautiful woman, and he gives Pandora a box or a jar, and he tells her not to open it. So of course, put a big red button that says "Do not push me" in front of anybody, and what are they going to do? They're going to push the big red button. And so she opens the box, and out comes grief, labor, old age, madness, vice, anything that makes humanity and humans' life more difficult. And she slams it down, and the only thing that is kept in the box is hope. And so it's kind of hotly debated about whether or not that gives humanity hope or it takes it away. What is your read on that?
I'm sorry, say that question one more time. I was reading about Prometheus.
So the only thing that is left in the box, that after the box has released all of this horrid torrent of torture on humanity, everything that makes our lives more difficult. She closes the box, and the only thing left in the box is hope. And so it's kind of debated about whether or not that takes hope away from us, or it helps us to hold on to it. And so scholars don't seem to have a grasp on whether or not that is intended to be useful for humanity, or another vice, or an inability to hold on to hope.
Okay, because I was brought up to believe that the one unique part of human beings was our sort of our eternal hope, that no matter what evil is happening or chaos or whatever's happening in the world, we always have hope that things are going to turn out all right. And I truly believe that good is going to conquer evil. I truly believe that. Perhaps because of Pandora's box, but I've always had the interpretation that leaving hope in the box meant that it can't fly out and be gone, that we still have that in our, we have that in our pockets. Always, we can always have hope.
I like that interpretation, because I feel like maybe it's kind of, the question is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? And it depends on how you look at the box, on if you can hold on to hope or if it's being held from us. It's kind of a question per the individual, if they have an optimistic view of the world and humanity, or if they have a pessimistic view, and that we are just damned if we do and damned if we don't.
Right. Yeah, I won't go there. I'm not sure if I believe in the half full or half empty. I'm conflicted about that, but I do believe that we are good in the core, and that the good will come out in the end. And from my belief system is that the most contemptible people, the most contemptible, will find their way back to love in the end. And I think that's what the fairy tales tell us. Except maybe the original Grimm versions, which are so horrific, and we don't read them anymore because they're so horrific. They give us a sort of negative view on what can happen between two beings. But I love Hollywood and happy endings. It works for me because I believe that's really what's going to happen. Good is going to conquer evil in the end. Love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I love that too. I mean, I want that in the end for all of us. And what was that Martin Luther King Jr. quote? The moral arc is long, but it leans towards light and love. Something along those lines. Do you remember?
The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that quote.
Yeah. I lived in Spain for 25 years, and Spanish movies and novels, oh my God, they're so depressing. I read them all. I read so many Spanish classics because I wanted to learn Spanish and I wanted to know some of the culture. And it was just so heavy and depressing. And they'd make fun of me because I love Hollywood movie. And I'm like, yes, I want a happy ending. You can say
what do you think it is about their culture that? What do you think it is about that culture that really gravitates towards a sad ending? Do they just want a faucet so that they can release their pent up sadness?
Interesting question. I mean, I know French movies also go towards the really sad side. Maybe it's Europeans that they like a more realistic view of it, and they do make fun of Hollywood movies. And I say, make fun of them if you want, but those are the ones I'm going to see. I don't need to be depressed, and I don't need to be sad. I don't need to pay for that. I will pay to be happier. So, yay Hollywood endings.
Okay, so this is something that I wanted to talk about a little bit because I was really confused. So when I told the second part of the Fisherman and the Jinn, when the king goes to the hidden city, I was confused about the 4 fish because they represent 4 different religions living in harmony in one place. And so my question was this actually a thing? Was religious freedom available during a time period? And it actually is true. So it's not religious freedom in the way that It's written in the United States Constitution, but people could practice their own faith. They could own property. They could hold government jobs, and they could run community courts. They had to pay a special tax if they were not of the Muslim faith, in exchange for protection and exemption from military service. And so it wasn't modern religious freedom. There was a clear hierarchy where Muslims were definitely at the top, but compared to medieval Christianity, Christian Europe, where Jews were massacred and heretics were burned, the four-colored fish representing different religions living together was actually truthful, which I found really interesting, and that it would be represented in that story.
There's a lot of religious tolerance that we don't know about because conflict is so much more melodramatic, and that's what sells newspapers, and that's what drags people into watching news. But for 800 years, Muslims had control over the Spanish Peninsula, and they were incredibly tolerant of all religions, and they lived in peace for 800 years. And then the church came in and basically killed everyone who didn't agree with the churches. They got rid of the Muslims, they got rid of the Jews, they got rid of anyone who wasn't part of the church. But yeah, these stories are very true that there was incredible tolerance. And I will say, even in Israel, and I know this is probably polemic just to say it, before the British got involved, there was incredible religious tolerism and cultural tolerance in Palestine, in what became Israel. And the British decided that wasn't interesting enough, so they pitted them against each other. Lawrence of Arabia, that movie is about the British taking over and creating conflict between these religious devices.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you do any research on themes or symbolism? I'd love to hear your thoughts about any of that.
Yeah, I didn't. We'll cut this out. I didn't because I was so involved with 1001 Nights. So I know. Do you have any?
I do.
All right. So Vanessa, one thing we always want to talk about are themes, and I usually am the queen of themes. I love them. I love deeper meanings. And this time I didn't get into it because I was so fascinated by Shahrazad and her role as being this incredibly strong woman in a seemingly soft way, and saving a whole generation of women, essentially. But I know that you've looked into a lot of themes, and so I'd love to hear them, and then if something comes to me, I'd love to make some comments on it. How's that?
Yeah. Okay, so when I was doing research into themes, I wanted to look at it from two separate lenses, because I have the lens of a Westerner, of an American, because I grew up in this culture. But the way that someone from the Middle East would be reading it would look entirely different, especially if they are coming from a Muslim background. And even if they aren't Muslim themselves, they are growing up in that culture, and so there is going to be a different types of lens. And so I kind of divided each theme into American versus Arabic. And so the first one I looked at is luck versus fate and divine will. So when the fisherman is casting his nets and he brings in the copper jar from the ocean, a lot of times Americans will see this as lucky coincidence. He was at the right place at the right time, or fortune was smiling on him, on the deserving. And that's a lot of times how we frame things. But someone from who is an Arab would see something different. They would see it as divine decree, because there are no coincidences. The jar was always going to come up on that fourth cast because it was written. Now, I had to kind of look into this because I didn't really understand the difference between fatalism and what is called Kedar, which is what I said, the divine decree. So this is the difference. Fatalism says that the road is already built. You're just walking on it. Where you end up was already decided, and nothing changes based off of your choices, and so your free will doesn't make any difference in your life. So that's the fatalistic point of view. What the Kedar, the divine Cree, says is the road is already built, and your job is to walk as well as you possibly can, because God or Allah knows where you will end up. So you act and strive and make choices to be the best that you can be, and you release the outcome to God now, or Allah. And that is like kind of a very thin line. And I see this as well growing up in a Christian nation. There's this kind of like give and take between whether or not your free will actually has any meaning on your life. Does God have absolute control, or do you actually have human free will and you make a difference based off of your choices where you end up? And it really honestly kind of depends on the denomination of Christianity, on where you fall on that spectrum. But I think it's a really interesting give and take that a lot of religions struggle with, and is specific to the Muslim religion, because some people really have a fatalistic viewpoint where it doesn't matter what you do, but that's not the intended, is not intended to be that way. It's intended that you are supposed to make good choices so that your life will end up the way God or Allah has intended.
Really interesting. I can't speak to Islam, because I don't know much about it. I did have a partner teacher who was Muslim, and I asked her questions about it, but it didn't resonate with me, so I didn't ask too many questions. I do know that in Western society, I make a very strong distinction between religion and spirituality, and I think that most people believe that they're religious, and yet that religion isn't integrally spiritual. What happens, I think, a lot of people believe they need to go to church and be seen, and that means that they're spiritually evolving. Aligned. And it doesn't necessarily believe that, because in many, I grew up in a Jewish family, and we went to synagogue, not every day, but every week at least. And I didn't have the experience of being encouraged to be spiritual. There's a big difference between learning the dogma, as you were saying, learning the scriptures, learning about the biblical characters, and learning about spirituality. And I now study a whole belief system where it is about spirituality that evolves from the Hindu religion. And in India, spirituality is it kind of embraces most of the culture. So, for instance, I was listening to one of the monks that practices many of the techniques that I believe in. And he said when he was growing up, for instance, there was one occasion where he came home and he had taken a very important exam. And in the States, in Western cultures, if you take an exam and you do really well, you go out and celebrate. You have ice cream, you have a dinner, you get, your parents may give you a car or whatever, it's a big celebration. Yeah. But it has nothing to do with spirituality. He said in his case, he came home and he had this big smile on his face. And the first thing his father said to him he said, "Don't tell me what the score is. You go right to the altar and thank the gods for your score." And that is their perspective, is that spirituality is so much part of their lives. And so that goes to what you were talking about, that actually when the story starts, the fisherman begins his daily task by calling upon and trusting Allah to give him a copious net full of treasures. And the fact that he gets mud and a donkey, and what are the other things? He gets the genie.
Pieces in glass.
Pieces of glass.
Jar.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it makes sense. But the point is that he asks God first. And that's not something we are brought up to do. I don't believe you were. I know I wasn't.
And after every cast, even when he brings in something that is worthless and he can't feed his family with, he still praises Allah every single time. And that is often taken out in Western tellings. I'm not including it in my telling as well, because it doesn't really connect with us as well. So it kind of takes us out of the story, I think. But that is very important for their storytelling.
So I'm just wondering, would it be against your belief system to include something where it shows that the fisherman is actually calling out in a spiritual way to receive this instead of just throwing out the
No,
net?
I think it's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that he does that, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's really nice because you can still be grateful even when you feel like you don't have as much as you want.
As much as you think you need, we always have exactly what
Yeah.
we need. So what's another theme that you were fascinated by?
Okay, so the clever versus the humble. So in American lens, we often really highlight those who have cleverness, right? If you think of Puss in Boots, he was the clever trickster. Any of the trickster characters are very clever, and they're able to get out of things using their wit. And so when we read the story, the individual is the source and the owner of what happens to them. The clever individual, the underdog, wins by his own ingenuity. Whereas in the Arabic sensibility, they are the humble vessel for Allah. So if you are the instrument and God is the source. And I think you actually talked a little bit about this some. Where does your power come from? Where does your power sourced? In the last one when we were talking about the talking eggs. Some people feel that the source of power source comes through your body rather than it coming from your body. It's coming from somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And so that is kind of the idea of, it's called hikmah, the divine wisdom flowing through a humble vessel. And the fisherman is the humble vessel. He gets his gift from Allah. He gets his personal achievement from being open to the greater spirit. And he also has the other principle, saber, active perseverance, steadfastness, and the ability to push forward during hardship without complaint. And so those are two principles that are being highlighted in the story that aren't necessarily seen through the lens of Western eyes. It's the difference between what he did and who he is. So in the American lens, it's what he does, and the Arabic lens, it's who he is.
Very interesting, because really this story is a microcosm of what's happening with the storyteller, Shahrazad. It seems like a very, a small, meek, powerless person in this whole melodrama of a king who has the support of his entire kingdom in being and having the right to kill her the day after, and yet she tricks him. And in the story of the fisherman and the jinn, it's this meek fisherman who has the power and the strength of Allah behind him, because that's who he prays to with every cast of the net. And even though the genie comes out and seems incredible, if you look at all the pictures, he seems overwhelmingly huge, this meek, tiny little fisherman uses his cleverness, his wisdom, to put the genie back into the bottle.
Yeah. Okay, and the third one is rags to riches, which is very much an American viewpoint, right? So it's the difference between he earned it versus being worthy. So the American dream is earned success through initiative and cleverness, whereas in the Arabic sensibility, the fisherman didn't rise because of his initiative. He was chosen because he was worthy. The reward is divinely bestowed abundance, not payment for services. So you cannot earn what God gives. You can only be worthy enough to receive it.
Okay, and you're also talking about, because I don't know if we spoke enough about the fact that the fisherman went to the Sultan with the 4 fish, and he was handsomely rewarded for those fish. But it has to do with the rags to riches reward, and that the fisherman leads the Sultan to a magical pond and rescues the prince. Did we talk about that, or we want to?
Yes, I gave the second version after your version, so
okay.
I gave that version.
Right, and so in the Islamic context, as far as I understand, wealth is viewed as righteous, and God gives it to you if you're patient and you're pious, which we could say the fisherman was. There was a certain amount of patience in pulling up cast after cast of what seemingly looked like meaningless goods. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And that was actually what I was saying with the saber, the principle of saber. Sometimes it's interpreted as patience, but it's kind of a mistranslation. It's more of the active perseverance rather than patience. So I guess there's
Interesting.
a slight distinction there.
Okay.
Um, being able to push forward through hardship without complaining, which is difficult for us Americans.
Yeah.
We like to complain.
Yeah, I think we can go there. All right. What's another theme that you wanted to talk about?
Okay, I wanted to talk about Jinn, and I talked a little bit about this in the past, but I did a lot of research on Jinn because they're I find them so incredibly fascinating, especially that they are actually a part of the Quran. Because after I mentioned that I read The City of Brass, and so I just thought that they were a folkloric creature, that it was part of fantasy, but they are actually a part of a religious text, kind of like angels. So I'm kind of envisioning them like angels, except for they're different than angels in that they have free will, whereas angels in both the Quran and the Old Testament, they cannot disobey. They exist only to worship God. And so when jinns are made, there is this famous jinn who rebels against God because once he creates Adam and he creates humans, he tells the jinn that they must bow down to Adam. And a famous jinn called the Iblis, he refuses, and so he falls from grace of God. Does that story sound familiar at all to you?
Yes, but can you keep going? Because I want to see the connection.
It's almost identical to the story of Lucifer, right? Lucifer,
Okay.
God does not tell Lucifer that he has to bow down to Adam, but he does say you have to give him respect. I don't think that it's actually a large story in the Bible. I think maybe there's like a line or two in the Bible, but we make a much bigger deal of it than it actually is in text form. But that is almost identical to the story of Lucifer falling from grace. Lucifer was an angel.
Wow.
He was the light of God, and at some point he decides that he doesn't like humans, and so he falls and he leaves the grace of God. And in a in there's a lot of debate about hell and Satan, and so somehow he becomes Satan. But I actually think that there is no biblical text that says Lucifer becomes Satan. That becomes kind of oral tradition rather than written text in the Bible.
Wow. Yeah,
Um,
that goes on a long tangent, but I really love that you are digging more into the gin. And just for our listeners' purpose, I started using DJINN, doing search for that, and it came up sometimes JINN and other times genies with
yeah.
GENIES. So any one of these. But if you do
Yes.
use DJINN, you'll find more of the Arabic symbolism, and if that's what you want, then you'll get a lot more information. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so there's lots of different types of jinn. So the one in our story is an Ifrit, and they are considered the seed of Iblis, who is the one who falls from the grace of Allah. And so Ifrit are malevolent. They are fire spirits, and they're associated with vengeance and destruction. And that is obviously the character in our story. But there's others that are they're kind of like muses. They're the ones who are connected to Arabic poets. There are some that can shapeshift into beautiful women. There are some that are tied to water. So there's all sorts of different types of jinn. And because they have free will, like humans, they can choose any religion they want. So there can be Muslim jinns and Christian jinns and Jewish jinns and atheist jinns. And so they are just as diverse as humans, and they live on a parallel plane, which again rung a bell for me when I read that they live on a parallel plane and they don't interact with humans much, but they can in specific places. So they're magical beings. They live in a magical dimension. So they live in a hidden world alongside humans. And so I was like, this sounds so much like fairies. This sounds so much like elves in Norway. And so when you look across traditions, there are almost always, there's a hidden world with some sort of magical being living in some sort of parallel universe that you may or may not be able to interact with, depending on if you cross into the sacred space or the liminal space. And so you see this in the Islamic world as a jinn. You see it in the Celtic world as a fairy. You see it in the Norse world with the 9 worlds and the elves. You see it in Japanese world and the spirit world. You see it in Native American tradition. Again, the spirit world is accessible through different vision quests or sacred places. In Australia with the Aboriginal people, this is across cultures, there are hidden realms with other creatures.
Well, I believe that there are different dimensions, and this is the most dense dimension that exists in all of the universes. And so all these fairies do exist, and the genies do exist. And what I love is that you're talking about the genie energy crossing into the human realm, into this dense 3D realm periodically. And what it represents for me is greed. It's I think it's fascinating that genies have free will, but for humans, it usually means asking the genie for something. And it also connects to me for the lottery. People buy lottery tickets. I don't know. Vanessa, please tell me you don't buy lottery tickets.
I have not ever bought a lottery ticket, but I will receive anyone that anyone wants to send me.
Okay, it's the lottery tickets. There is a connection. It's just sort of wanting something that you may not necessarily need, and if you get it, is it the best thing for you? We don't hear about all the stories where people either lose all their money once they get the lottery, they have so many psychological problems, or with family problems once they get the money that they admit later that it would have been better if they had never received the money. So in other words, this sort of brazen need for money, for more than we would actually need, leads us down a whole trail that in the end really is not for our benefit. So these genies, for me, it does represent a crossing of the dimensions, a crossing, the blending of different energies that perhaps we don't really need, that we are fine without it, that we have enough resources and we're given enough from Allah or God or the universe, whatever word you use to describe the creator. We're given everything we need, and we just need to appreciate it and don't keep wanting.
So you're saying you don't want to ever go searching for fairies?
Oh, no. I love fairies. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So but you just said the opposite. We don't need to go searching for other dimensions, and they're in another realm.
Did I say that? I have to record back. What I mean is don't ask.
You can be of two minds.
Sorry?
You can be of two minds.
Yeah, no, but no, absolutely. If I said that, I need to retract it, because what I mean to say is, yes, go into different dimensions. Find what's the magic, find the joy, find the hope. Let's say that again, in the other dimensions, but don't go there for thinking that you need something. We are given everything we need, and we just need to reframe it and really acknowledge it. But don't go looking for the genie, because it's probably not really what you want.
Well, most of the stories, the genie seems to be very vengeful. Of course, except in the Aladdin story, right? In our westernized version of Aladdin, the genie is hilarious and joyful, and he is not an Ifrit. He is a lovely a lovely creature rather than.
Are we talking about the Will Smith version? Which one are we talking about?
I haven't actually seen the Will Smith version. I was talking about the original. Disney cartoon version with Robin Williams.
Fun one. I'm not sure how Will Smith is portrayed these days in the States. Or have we forgiven him yet?
I think I think so. I mean, he's asked for forgiveness, which is better than most celebrities when they mess up. So
Yeah. Right.
I think we can forgive and forget pretty quickly in our society today.
Good, good. Because I don't watch the news. I don't live in the States. I'm in Mexico now, so I don't know, but it does kind of fascinate me. And
I think he's still banned from the Academy Awards for 10 years. I don't remember how long ago it was, so maybe it was
okay,
just 8 more years. I don't know. But he's banned from that award show for
right,
a decade.
can survive that. Okay,
I think so. I think he'll survive.
I think it's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I made the distinct. So I'm not saying that Jinn are the same as fairies or the same as elves, but I found it very fascinating when I read Hidden Realm, and I immediately thought of fairies, and I immediately thought of the elves in Norway. Not Norway. Iceland. Sorry, in Iceland. I said Norway, but I meant Iceland. Because there is a belief, there has been a belief for years amongst many cultures that there are these different dimensions. And so I think it's just really fascinating that we have different names for them, and they have different characteristics, but they seem very similar in a lot of different ways.
Okay. I'm not going to refute that
You
at
have
all.
thoughts. I can tell you're holding something back.
No.
What are you holding back?
I just want to make sure that nobody believes that I wouldn't want to go looking for fairies. I want fairies in my life.
I don't know that I would. I'm not going to go looking for fairies. Fairies are trouble, man.
Oh, we're thinking of the Irish versions, maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
Those tricksters.
I'm not going looking for fairies. They're not going to give me anything I want. They're going to hold me hostage.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to go into the origin of Jinn just a little bit because I was unclear about if they were just as old as the Quran or how old they were. And the belief in Jinn is possibly the oldest supernatural being in continuous human existence on Earth. This is just, we can't prove this because it's primarily from oral tradition, but the belief in Jinn absolutely predates Quran. It predates Islam. It predates Christianity. And there's all sorts of pre-Islamic folklore with wild desert spirits that are found, that are, a lot of times they're like the desert themselves. They're a force that could kill you or they could spare you. They don't really seem to have moral intention. Sometimes these older civilizations would elevate them in status. They would give them sacrifices. They would worship them like gods. Sometimes they had companions that would act as muses. They could be feared. They could be worshipped. They were always found in sacred places. And so they believe that they are as old as the belief in them, or as old as 3,000 to 4,000 BC. They weren't called jinns then, but the supernatural creatures that were believed in during this time period based off of different writings and carvings into blocks where inscriptions found in northwestern Arabia and physical inscriptions in stones in Syria seem to have, some scholars have inferred that these supernatural beings are very similar to what are now called jinn. So once again, this is all inference because this is not based off of writing, and it was based off of oral storytelling. But there is a lot of change that happens with jinn when Islam becomes the predominant language of the area. They're no longer allowed to be worshipped. They have to be held accountable to God. They become much more complex beings capable of choice rather than just elemental forces of nature. And they are not just a dangerous force, they are presented with moral dilemmas, and they have to make decisions for themselves.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't go into it until recently, the origins of the jinn, but what really strikes me when you're talking is that they were believed to be in the desert or desolate places, and not many people were invisible, were populated. And the more I work with mystic groups, the more I believe that these are energies that some people are able to see and most of us can't see, but we can train ourselves to see them. And so in the desert, my goodness, there were these energy sources that they named genies. But if you think about it, let's make a connection to the burning bush, which was also smoke. The genies were always come out as smoke from the bottles, the genie in the bottle.
Yeah.
And the burning bush was energy that was seen by Moses as God speaking from the burning bush as flames. Really interesting connections there.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is symbolism. And I know that you're going to have lots of comments. I know you didn't do your own research, but I'm sure you're going to have opinions. Okay, the number 4. The number 4 is incredibly important in the story, but also in Islam. So in the story, we see 4 forecasts per day, 4 objects pulled from the sea, 4 centuries of imprisonment by the jinn, 4 colored fish, 4 hills surrounding the enchanted lake, 4 mountains encircling the hidden world. And so 4 represents, in the cosmic order, 4 directions, 4 seasons, 4 rivers of paradise in the Quran, 4 archangels, 4 sacred months. So it's a really important number in this region. Any thoughts on the number 4?
Yes, because you're talking about, there's number 4, also 444 is usually interpreted as divine protection and support. So he cast 4 nets, and he asked Allah to bring him success for each casting, and he was given his success. But also you were talking about the number 4, a box. When we were talking about Pandora's box, a box is about 4 sides, and it held hope in by 4 sides, and 4 has a very positive meaning in most mystic societies. How's that?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Okay, the dead donkey. This is another one that is different through the eyes of a Westerner as opposed to someone from the Arabic world. Americans see something gross, something bad luck, maybe comical. But Arabs see it differently because it's wasted divine capacity, a dead potential in the world waiting to be restored. So Allah specifically names the donkey alongside horses and mules as something he creates deliberately as a gift to humanity. But in the same vein, in an opposite vein, dual symbolism, the harsh braying sound is a symbol to be avoided. So as a metaphor, the dead donkey represents wasted potential, a vessel designed to carry a divine blessing that is now useless, that humans can't use. And so it kind of describes the Ifrit's spiritual condition.
That's great. I'm not going to make any comments on that, and afterwards I'm probably going to shake myself because something will come up about a dead donkey. But let's go with what you just said so far.
Okay, and it should have been, okay, so what I have to note. The 4th thing he pulls from the sea is a sealed jar containing a supernatural being who should have become wise and instead becomes murderous, and the dead donkey is foreshadowing of that. So that's something interesting. Oh, okay, the jar of mud and broken pottery, the escalating disappointments. So the sequence is a dead animal, then there's a jar of mud, then there's broken pottery and glass, and it's a portrait of a broken world. Dead things, corrupted vessels, shattered wholeness. And then the 4th cast pulls up a vessel sealed, seemingly containing nothing, but this one holds the force that will ultimately restore the broken world to wholeness, specifically the broken world of the hidden city. And so the 3 failed casts, the world as it is, dead, dirty, broken. The 4th cast is the world as God intends it.
Wow. Okay, because I got, the mud and the mud in the pitcher represents the genie's agonizing 400 years of unhealed resentment living in the bottle. and foreshadowing, the foreshadowing, each one, as you said, is foreshadowing the danger of the genie coming out of the bottle. The fisherman should have thought about it. Don't touch the bottle.
Yeah. But it had the seal of Solomon, so it had to have something worthy, I guess.
Yeah, in the end, he
Plus,
benefited.
he was poor. He needed something.
Yeah, no, he benefited from it.
He needed something to feed his family.
Yeah.
Okay, the last thing was the copper jar. So copper is really important here because it's traditionally used in Middle Eastern folklore to contain supernatural. So he would have seen it as something important. And it also, in Islamic alchemy and mystical tradition, copper and lead are base metals that can be transformed into gold through a spiritual process. So it's literally made of materials representing spiritual rawness waiting for a transformation.
Gorgeous.
So
beautiful.
that copper jar is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last thing is the difference between the number 3 and 4 in Western society storytelling and Middle Eastern storytelling, because we do 3 stories of 3. Everything happens in 3s. In most fairy tales, we see 3 little pigs, the 3 little bears in Goldilocks. There's 3 wishes. And so 3 in Western storytelling and 4 in Islamic storytelling perform exactly the same function, each culture's sacred number of completeness. When an Arab listener hears 4, they feel the same instinctive rightness as a Western listener feels hearing 3.
So many. I always want to say things in 3s. I always want to give 3 examples of things. There's something very mystical and magical about the number 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is, we do value 4 as well because of the four directions, 4 seasons.
The 4 questions
So I think
in Passover. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize there were only 4 archangels. I probably
There are
should have.
many archangels. I'm not sure. Maybe
Are
there are
there?
4. Yeah, there's so many archangels. I bought a book once on archangels, and there are many, many, many.
Okay.
Maybe 4 major ones. Which are the ones? Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael. What are the other 2 that you recognize? Okay.
Only Michael.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I love Raphael because
yeah.
he's the healer. He sends us healing energy. But yeah, I have a book that I must have left in Spain about the archangels and how we can talk to them at any time. They're here for us. They always say, you don't ask for help enough. We need
Interesting.
to ask for, I know. The mystics, just the other dimensions say to us, we could help you only if you ask. So ask for us for help.
Is there a specific way to ask?
Just say, I need help. I need help right now. I've been doing that recently because I've had some challenges and I knew I needed help. And I get help from Mary Magdalene. And this is another one where the Bible has been mistranslated and edited by men. And Mary Magdalene, as far as I understand, is portrayed as a prostitute. Is that what you've been brought up to believe? And she was actually... Go ahead.
Yes, but in the Da Vinci Code, that was that was changed for most Westerners.
Thank goodness. How was she portrayed?
Well,
I
as the
shouldn't
right
say
hand
thank
of Jesus.
until I know, but
in the Da Vinci Code, she's said to be the right hand of Jesus.
They say, the mystics say, she's not just the right hand, she was Jesus' wife. She was his partner in every way.
Yes.
In every way that was necessary. And should I say, she even had his children? But the point is... That
was in the Da Vinci Code as well.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so
yeah.
I speak to Mary Magdalene. She was incredibly strong, but compassionate and loving, very loving, but strong woman. And that's who I ask for help from these days, and I get it. She gives it to me. But the point is, whoever you believe it, for help.
There's a book that I think that you will like, and it's all about the lost book of Mary Magdalene. And there has been recent findings within the past couple of years of some more documents that have been found that are being translated that are very interesting. I'll see if I can find a link to that book.
Please, I
heard the author talk recently about it, and I found it really interesting.
Okay. Yep, believe it already.
Okay, I'll link it. So, okay, we need the article about the fairy tales, the Martin Luther King quote and that book, right? Those are links that we need to put up.
That sounds
okay.
good. Yeah. So
Okay.
I would like to
I think we've done it.
Yeah, and I would just like to end what we both take away from the story. Mine is, I think it's no secret, mine is about Shahrazad and how intellect triumphs over physical brutal force, how compassion, cleverness can conquer violence and revenge. And I think we need to really lean into that and what a heroine she was and is for us.
Yeah. I agree. I really think that she is representative of how stories can be used for healing and for good. And that is what I think you and I really strive for on this podcast as a whole, because we see that there's so much beauty even in the tragedy of these stories, right? There's so much depth and complexity to these stories that we're really trying to highlight and show the positive force of good for stories and storytelling.
Oh my goodness, Vanessa, every time I think that we don't need to do this anymore, you say something like that and I think, oh my goodness, we need our listeners to hear more and more and more of this to change the world. That's hopefully what
I think so.
Encouraging.
I think fairy tales can change the world. I love that.
Yes.
They are the antithesis to war.
Yes, so beautiful. All right, we're going to quote that, and please put that in Facebook when you're working on this podcast. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, listeners, we would love to hear your thoughts on the 1001 Arabian Nights, and specifically the story that we're covering, The Fisherman and the Jinn. Have you read it? Are you interested in reading it now? What was your take on this story? We want to hear your questions that came up for you as you were reading it. And now I need to, I think, reread it. I'm going to give it another chance.
The whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing.
In Spanish. Do it in Spanish. That'll be even more fun.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Maybe after the third reading in English. Okay, then I'll do a Spanish.
Okay. There we go.
A Spanish version. All right. Thanks so much for listening to Fairy Tale Flip. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment and do all of the things that help indie podcasts like ourselves to be found. Give us a review, and we can't wait to do this with you again sometime soon. Until then, keep the fairy tales alive.
Bye, everyone.